Good to go? Yep. All right, we're going to start tonight off with a public hearing. Public hearing is open for any citizens that would like to comment. We are setting the tax levies for the upcoming year. I'll remind you that while the public is welcome to speak, the board members will not necessarily ask you questions or comment. We do have an item farther in our agenda in the open session meeting, of which we will hold discussion on this item. Is there any members of the public who would like to speak? Okay, with that, I'll call the public hearing closed. We'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Eastward Alderman Rob Foster.
Here.
Eastward Alderman Mark Bowers.
Here.
Mayor Natalie Nish.
Here.
Westward Alderman Vicki Montgomery.
Here.
Westward Alderman Stacey Lee.
Here. Okay, and at this point, I'll remind everybody that we do have select staff and the elected officials in person, but we are having the public attend via Zoom due to the public health emergency for COVID-19. At this time, I'd like everybody to stand. We'll have a moment of silent prayer and reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And board members, we have the August 13 minutes in your board packet. Do we have any corrections, changes, discussion on this item? If not, I'll take a motion to approve. Second. Have a motion, a second?
Second.
Second from Mark Bowers. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Followed by expenditures and financial reports. I will note on the memorandum that was attached to this that the second item is the fire district payout. This is actually an agenda item later in our agenda. If you'd like to pull this specific item out and discuss it then, we can definitely do that. If you'd like to approve it here, you are welcome to do the same. Are there any questions about the expenditure packet?
Well, so just going back to your last comment, is there anything that could be changed about it anyway? Specifically to the fire district?
No. This agrees with the contractual pre-annexation agreement.
Yeah. Okay.
Fine.
Thanks.
If no questions, I'll take a motion.
Expenditures.
Have a motion.
Second.
Second for Stacey Lee. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We also have a few departmental reports. Yes. Looks like collection. Any questions on this report? We can move on from there. Unfinished business, we'll start with COVID-19 update. And Mike Taylor.
Yes, good evening. So I sent that out again, should have got it this afternoon. Just kind of be brief because I know we've got some discussion to have on the topic as well, but going over the current situation, CDC is reporting 5,799,046 cases in the United States, of which 46,393 are new cases in the last 24 hours. There have been a total of 178,998 deaths thus far, of which 1,239 of those are new in the last 24 hours. Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services is reporting 79,574 cases in Missouri. That represents an 8.4 increase over the last 7 days. 1,450 deaths out of 943,023 persons tested. In Missouri, 114 of 114 counties are reporting cases. World Health is saying there are 21,218 cases worldwide, with 821,462 deaths in 216 countries. In Webster County, we've had 204 cases out of 4,436 persons tested. Currently, 44 patients are actively ill, 16 of those being in the central region of Webster County. Currently, we have no patients hospitalized as a result of COVID. 59 have recovered. Along with this, we've got 23 patients pending results. Approximately 115 plus are being monitored, and approximately 90 plus are quarantined, and we still have had the one death in the county. The county by county breakdown there for your review. On second page, assumptions, known information, number 8, Marshfield schools have returned to session under level yellow. Students are currently in session 5 days per week. Webster County Task Force Report, Advisory Board. The drive-through testing site on the 24th of August was well attended. We tested 31 persons for COVID, come back with 5 positive results from that, and 19 were tested for antibodies with 4 positive results. Another drive-through test has been scheduled for September 14th at the fairgrounds again. Test site's free of charge. Both symptomatic and asymptomatic will be tested. However, we won't be doing antibody testing at that location going forward. So due to the changes by the Webster County Health Board, the task force has transitioned to an advisory committee. I plan to attend when available. However, the meeting dates and times conflict with my schedule currently. And then on the back page, talking about changes in the statistics since I last presented to you. Cases have increased by 66 since that time. Persons tested have increased by 578, and active cases have increased by 26. Underneath recommendations, the number of cases in the county and with the Marshfield area are continuing to climb. The impending influenza season will likely make this situation a little bit more complicated as it comes about in the next weeks and months. While I feel that we have a solid testing process in the county now, the process may become overwhelmed as the flu season arrives. This compounded by the intensive contact tracing that is required by the health unit for those testing positive could easily overwhelm local resources this fall. For this reason, I feel that it remains critical to maintain our current guidelines and requirements at this time. And that's my report for this evening, unless you have questions.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions specifically for Michael?
Why did they discontinue the antibody testing?
That was an action taken by the Webster County Health Board, which I think is here. I do not know the answer to that, but they may be able to answer that for you.
So we have several people attending. I don't know how you want to get me to unmute them. How do we want to go through that? Do we want to
Allow them to unmute.
Okay. I don't know who wants to speak on that. You should be able to unmute yourself, though, if you'd like to chime in.
Okay. We can continue on. So there are a couple things I'll throw in before we get back to our visitors tonight. One, it came to our attention about a week ago that Greene County has a portion of their order which allows partitions to be placed between booths that are 6 foot tall. And that internal, that control or that mitigation allows them to sit booths back to back. Okay, so it's something that was actually brought up by a business owner here in town asking whether or not we would allow that, because that's not allowed in the current order. I have talked to Michael about it. I believe Michael has talked to others about it, and overall we feel fairly comfortable that if they wanted to go through the time and expense of putting partitions that would go up to 6 foot between their booths, that we would also allow those booths to be sat back to back. So I'm looking at drafting something up that can just go to those specific business owners. It would have the specifications required. It would basically just add on to our existing order, that if they were interested in doing that, that it appears to fall within our lines of mitigation for COVID-19. Also, I have placed in front of you a chart. This represents 3 different pieces of information since the 4th of July. The top line, the dark blue section, is the total number of positive cases in the county in total. The gray line on this is the active cases at a given point in time. And the lighter blue below that is the, and we're going to say greater Marshfield area. This is not city alone. This is a larger section of our county, but it's not the county in total. So this will allow you to see that as our cases increase county total, how many of those are active at any given point, and what percentage of those, or what portion of those active cases are related to our specific area. While this does give us a great view of our specific area, Michael and I have had a lot of conversations about bigger picture, and so I'm going to use a lot of Michael's words in this, is that it's not just the factor of what Marshfield's cases are, it's the county in total puts a strain on the health department, and the region in total that puts a strain on the health mechanisms, the hospitals and such in our area. So this is just an extra piece of information. And now we can go into the question that we had last meeting, which brought everybody together tonight. And thank you very much, health department members, health board members, and also task force members, I see. I really do appreciate you coming and helping us with this discussion. The question that was posed last week was kind of more along the lines of appreciation and wanting to know more, and Mark, please fill in the blanks if I missed something here. Wanting to know more about the school's plan for back to school and the different levels and how it is reactive based on the current COVID situation. And trying to understand if the city would be able to have some sort of a plan that would also say, if this, then that. Mark, am I getting the spirit of what you wanted there?
Yeah, I just, Springfield has had a mandatory mask rule for businesses for some time now. And thus far, numbers are slowly climbing, but my question is, when would that be? We've strongly recommended masks for some time, but when I was curious what the task force felt, when the appropriate time, or what would be the trigger for us to consider that ourselves, if there were opinions on that, or and as she mentioned, the school, they had designated things that would trigger certain precautions and so forth, and that seems pretty handy. I just wondered how, if as a city there was something similar, or just really what your opinions were regarding the possibility of mandatory masks, if and when.
Just to clarify, Mark, the school does not have if this, then this. We just have designated the varying levels of reaction. There is no set, if we get to this number, if this happens, we go from green to yellow, yellow to orange. We have a plan of what those levels look like. No set triggers that would kick us from the yellow we're in now to red, or from orange back to yellow. Those are not established at all.
Is it possible that administration has those triggers?
Not, if they are, they're not sharing them with staff. Or
But
just-
they might have. So can we make sure that they're unmuted and have the opportunity to speak? Because I'm with Mark. I'd like for them to speak directly to this.
This is Jason Spencer. I'm the president of the board of the health unit, or I guess the chair, not the president. But the school did not. We were not involved with their development of their plan. Each school developed their own plan regarding how they're going to approach COVID-19 based upon DESI guidelines, and kind of determining on their own how they were going to implement that with their own school. The health unit representatives, Terry Banks, the administrator, did attend a meeting with the varying schools when they met together to discuss this. She brought up some concerns regarding varying scenarios that the health, from the health unit's perspective, but we were not involved with the development of their of the plan that they have in place right now.
Okay.
I will say that having, I'll just follow on with what Stacey was saying. Having just talked with Mike Henry the other day, I know that, they're hitting the same problem that we would if we wanted to do a plan like that. Because I agree, Mark, it sounds awesome, and I would love to be able to be that transparent and sort of clear cut of, if this happens, then it triggers this and that. And I love that idea, but there's so many variables that go into it that it almost makes it impossible to not just do it on a broader contextual basis. It sounds like it'd be awesome to be able to say this number of cases, but then, even just as, which would be, that reasonably sounds like that makes sense, but I just use this example of, if one family had traveled, there were 10 of them and they traveled out of state and all 10 of them came back and they were positive, well, then that triggers 10 more cases. It looks really bad, but in reality, it's 10 cases in one family that are all quarantined together. So then they're not a threat to the community. So it's hard to just go by any one variable, and it just has to be more contextualistic, I think.
Are there any strong opinions on the board as to whether mandatory masks in businesses would be a good idea?
I personally, I'm one of the members of the board, and I work at Mercy, and I'm in the middle of the testing and seeing patients and being with COVID patients. My personal opinion is, of what I've seen and everything, anything that we can do to help stop it, and I think mandatory masking would be awesome. Just as a precaution, one more thing to try to stop it.
I think that's probably one of those issues that, just like everyone else, we're all mixed, because there's of us on the board, we would like to do everything, but then when I look at the numbers, we've done really well, and we're fairly flat here. I mean, it's gonna go up some, I'm sure, because of school, but we're not bad. And to me, it's just not at a threshold level. So I wouldn't recommend it at this point. But just
Well,
like any other group out there, there's going to be mixed views.
I would ask a question here, not a view, because
Yeah.
I'm for masks. I wear one all the time, but I look at Springfield, I look at everywhere else, and they've made exemptions, which I'm sure you will have to exempt as well. Anybody with a medical condition that can't wear a mask is not required to do so. So therefore, every business posts that. You're not allowed to ask anybody due to HIPAA what their medical condition is. So you've opened a door that people that's going to wear a mask is going to wear a mask, and people that's not going to wear a mask is not going to wear a mask. And you've just went around in circles with a mandatory masking that's not going to get you any more than you got right now with strongly suggesting a mask. That's just my observation.
I think that's totally where I am too. And with the inability really to police it, so to speak, you know, I'm on campus, I'm on an MSU, policing that is really hard. And then on a broader scale, it's tough.
Yeah, that
There's a
point has
mask
been
too,
brought up
so.
in meetings before. There is obviously no way to police that, but as a city, you know, in hindsight, I want to look back and be able to see that we did everything we possibly could.
Right, so I'm a little concerned that there's not a consensus or direction from your board level. I mean, it sounds like from your board. I don't mean to make that sound like an accusation, but I think I would have expected that maybe you guys as a board would have come to sort of some place on, yes, it is helpful and ought to be done, or no, it isn't. But it sounds like the board themselves all have various opinions, and there's not a sort of coalescence of
and I would speculate that if you were to poll your own group, you would find varying views also. You know, what we're looking at is the fact that, you know, enforcement of that is going to be very difficult. And like Fred was saying, the people that are going to wear it are going to wear it. The people that aren't. And if you go to Springfield right now and you walk around in the stores, you're going to find a mixture of people who are wearing it and people who aren't. And from the board's perspective, you know, we're looking at multiple factors involved with, you know, what decisions need to be made. But even something coming from the board is merely a recommendation, because we don't have any teeth or you know, to put behind any type of a mandate to say everyone should wear a mask or everyone shouldn't. But you know, I think what it comes back to is kind of like what Ann was saying, the curve is fairly flat right now. And so, you know, that's why you're going to see differing perspectives. You have someone like Marilyn and myself who are registered nurses who I work at Cox, she works at Mercy. We see, you know, we see different things in Greene County than what are necessarily going on in Webster County. And so I think that, you know, is gonna factor into varying perspectives regarding whether, you know, masking is needed to be a mandate or not.
Rob, if I could speak in real quick, if it's okay.
yeah.
We did send out, the previous task force did send out documentation. Scott, you may have to help me, but it's been within the last couple months that actually did, our group did come to a consensus stating that we do encourage municipalities to adopt a requirement for businesses to mandate masks. That was actually in some documentation we put out some time ago.
I thought that was the case, yeah. Thank you for clarifying, Mark.
That's this is Tiffany Kirk. I'm a nurse practitioner here in Marshfield. And one thing that I was looking at and considering with regards to the masking is looking at how that has helped with Springfield's numbers. And one thing that I noticed when reviewing different counties' numbers, specifically Greene County's and ours too, is that in July was the peak so far of everyone's numbers county-wise, with the most kind of majority-wise there. And then we've seen a drop in August of almost half of that across the board, whether the county had masking or not, or whether so I don't know that there's really showing that, you know, and especially because that, you know, anybody can say that they have a medical condition and that they can't, you know, they are not required to wear a mask if we're not going to enforce it, or if there's no way to really enforce that. So, you know, I think that if you look at the counties that have mandatory masking, then you should be seeing a higher drop in that than what we are seeing.
Well, there's a lot of factors that would go into that. But I will say, in Springfield, as I go about, I see far more people wearing masks than I do in Marshfield. And there are still those few that will not, and those people will always be among us. But I do tend to think that the mandatory rule at least got more people wearing them.
Well, thank you very much. I think we have
to kind of revert back to what Tiffany was saying, though, in theory, then if with Springfield and Greene County wearing masks, if that was going to make a significant difference in the numbers, then they would have had a significant drop rather than a drop that in COVID numbers that is more equivalent to counties that even did not wear masks.
You got to take into consideration the population differences. I work at Mercy too. You know, there is definitely data that it can help, at least in some regard. And as a responsible citizen, I want to take every safety precaution I can.
But I think you're weighing, at some point you begin to infringe upon the rights of people, because when I walk around Springfield, I see a lot of people who aren't wearing masks in stores and restaurants, but then I also see people that aren't wearing them properly. They wear them down below their nose, which defeats the whole purpose of wearing the mask. And so, and like you said, there's a big demographic difference between Greene County and Webster County. So because Greene County adopts a policy doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right policy for Webster County, because we do have a very different demographic here regarding population density.
There were similar arguments made about seatbelts when that law came into force in the 80s. People wear those improperly as well to this day. But
are we talking? We're talking those are apples and oranges, sir.
No, it is not. Seatbelts were mandatory because you are not only at risk of losing your own life if you don't wear them, you're at risk of harming someone else in the vehicle. That's the same principle behind masking.
Well, thank you all for joining us. We do appreciate you answering the questions that were posed tonight, and we will reach out to you again if we have additional questions. If it's all right, I'd like to go ahead and go on with our agenda. Our next item on here is a report from our collector on the COVID relief policy. We did a payment plan for those certain citizens who took advantage of our no cutoff and no late fee penalty when COVID started. And this was put into your packet just purely for information purposes, because if this should ever come back again and we wanted to make the same type of policies, I wanted you to be able to see the effects on not only the city finances, but also on our citizens and how they've been able to come back out of this. So there were 28, I believe, accounts that did take advantage of this and hadn't paid it off by the time we cut it off. 9 of those have paid in full. 6 took advantage of the payment plan. And the others, the other 13 have been cut off instead of taking advantage of that. So it looks like about half of the people were able to get a good footing and get back out of this, and about half were not. So that is specifically for informational purposes, and we'll wait a little bit. And this was supposed to be paid off by the end of the year, so I'll look to put this back in the packet maybe in October, so we can see how we're doing.
I'm looking for that part of the report here, but a question I've got, you said that some were cut off, ultimately cut off, right?
Correct.
remind me, when water service is cut off, what happens to the certificate of occupancy in the home? How do you occupy a home without water?
I couldn't answer that off the cuff.
Something we probably want to look at for various reasons, not just for this. I mean, fair enough that we don't have, but let's find out if there's anything, any kind of policy or any kind of rule, because it's worth considering all the ramifications of not having water, and I'm not coming at it from any other angle. Then let's think about all the things that could come into play. And I want to reiterate, I'm not saying this because I'm trying to lead to let's don't ever shut somebody's water off. We need to understand the health issues, and if you're not going to have water, can you have an occupancy? Because there can be, well, I'm getting into discussion. We just need to bring it back.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this is discussion. This is fair discussion like this stuff. Because there can be, if it's as easy for somebody who is not in their right mind to just say, I'm just going to not pay for water, I'm not going to have water, and they have young children who cannot make up their minds, somebody needs to step in. It may need to trigger something.
Okay.
And I think we need to be advocates, like, as we are trying to be advocates in this pandemic also. I think that discussion is not over with us. I think this is another case where we need to be advocates for the health of our citizens as well, including those who don't have choices.
Okay. I will put that on the future agenda item. So let's move on to the water improvement contract number 1, change order number 5.
Yeah, so Julie Jensen has been attending these meetings. Jason Clark is with us tonight, so I'll kind of introduce it and then give you a quick breakdown, and then Jason can go on into details if you guys want it. So basically, contract 1 and contract 2 kind of meet at the base of the towers, and so there was some hope. There was some hope that one of the existing lines going to the tower would be able to be utilized. That's going to be the only section of pipe going into this 2-pipe system that would be left. It's not a very long run, but unfortunately, it's kind of an expensive run that runs in the bottom of the tower, trying to get to it, and the vault that it takes to get in there, and the coring to the foundation wall. There's several things in this change order that deal. It's all dealing with that one area. Jason, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think the key to this is when they got into the tank and looked at it and saw the foundation, saw the vault and the piping, that they decided that they wanted to do it a little bit differently. And so the change order is basically modifying the plan slightly based on the conditions actually found after the tank was drained. That's my understanding. So it consists of a new vault and grading at the base, and then some new piping and redoing the piping slightly. So the total amount, I believe, is $27,000, which includes all this revised piping.
Where are we at in the project, percentage of completion?
So I asked that question this week in a meeting, and so they were thinking roughly between the engineer, between Julie, and between the contractor, they were looking at somewhere between 25 and 30%. So Julie went ahead and put this change order together, and in there, if you'll notice at the top of page 2, if this change order is approved, this will put us at using 31% of the PDs. So it's really tracking right with the project.
Okay.
Well, maybe just because a lot of stuff is front-end loaded, a lot of because it's actually tracking ahead on percentage of completion, but is this the kind of project, as many are, where a lot of your surprises are going to be discovered on the front part? There's some things that on this project that haven't even broken ground yet, right?
Right.
Yeah, so we still have a lot of unknowns here.
Right. I would agree with that statement. Yep.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion for approval? Or any other questions?
Yeah, so I've got a question. Sam, even looking back in hindsight, should this have been predictable or not? I mean, we pay engineers a lot of money. How does something like this look like?
I don't know. I
I
think
mean,
that
we pay a lot of money for.
I agree. I think that it is something that could have been tried. Yes.
So what can we?
Part of this change in particular, this change in particular was such that, once you drain the tank and then it's actually visible, you can explore that type of thing for the piping, because you can't really see the piping. You really can't, you got a stem full of water and you got a tower full of water. So once you can drain that and identify the piping there, you can kind of reevaluate how you want to handle it. So it's kind of difficult to do it during design. You kind of see it when the tank is drained. So the tank wasn't drained during design. We did, we drained it here during this project.
How big is this pipe?
12-inch.
So it's not like you got in it's not like you drained it and got in the pipe, right?
Right.
So I'd be able to see that.
No, the valve is inside the valve is inside the tank. The valve is in the base of the tank. But not the tank, the base of the tower. Is that right? Or am I?
Yes, the vault is in there, but I would say that this is something that could have been caught in design, and Warren's not actually drained yet, and so the vault you have access to the current vault from the tower.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
To answer your question, Rob, yes, I believe that it could have been worked out in the beginning.
So what's to be, not to be critical, but constructive looking forward, what's to be learned for the next time? I think this happens sometimes, right, where something comes up, and really it's something we've paid somebody to try to make sure we avoid. So what, do we need to start considering that in contracts when things like this come up, and we're actually paying money with the expectation that we find this stuff, and get a full scope? Because why else do you pay money? Other than just.
Sure, no, I agree.
And I'm not saying let's have an answer, but I don't know. I just tonight, but it's not the first time.
I'll leave you with this, right? And Jason can disagree, he can agree or disagree, but I kind of compared this one to change order number 2 that came down at the down the street plan on the Branco contract, that basically there was some wiring that was missed to go to the flow meter. Okay, it was not in the bid specs, so it wasn't in the estimate. Not necessarily that we're paying more than it would have cost us in the beginning. It just wasn't in the estimate.
Right.
So the overall project would have been higher. And so they do compare these prices.
They do accordingly.
Right, and they do compare these prices, right, to make sure that they're fair and to make sure that they agree with them. But when it boils down to the projects that I've dealt with, right, it's just a lot going on in that little area, and it's just one of those things, right? It's not
Take your licks.
Yeah.
Okay. With that, do we have a motion for approval?
I move to approve. So we need to do it right now.
Yeah, it's holding.
Okay. I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Thanks, Jason. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you.
And Mr. Baker, we have a pool update.
Yes, ma'am. We've got 2 weekends left for the pool. That's this weekend, the 29th and 30th. And the following weekend, which is Labor Day weekend, the 5th, 6th, and 7th. We will have 3 more night swims this Saturday, the following Saturday, and then Monday, that is Labor Day. We'll finish up with a night swim.
Fantastic. Your COP items?
COP items, revamped this list, went and did price comparisons on everything, looked everything over, took the stuff out that we found good workarounds for or have already purchased and no longer needed. and updated the list. It actually came in a little bit under what the old list was. All the shipping has been tallied in, totaled, and figured out, and figured into the list as well.
Okay. So these are items that were in our original construction documents as equipment to be purchased with the pool out of the COPs. Our intention is to go ahead and go forward with purchasing these items, gain reimbursement through the COPs, and then the remainder of the COP balance would be reimbursement to the transportation fund. And that is what the board's wishes were by consensus. And last week, did we take care of the vote, or last meeting? Did we vote to move those monies over?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I think at the next meeting, what we probably need to see is what that number actually is in comparison to just the bottom end of that worksheet that we already had with this new number plugged in, so we know the exact dollar figure that we're talking about. That way the board can make a formal action to reimburse the transportation fund or any of the other funds which made cash expenditures related to this project.
Can we talk about some of these items too?
Yes, sir.
I've got a couple of questions. Number one is just generally, there's some big items here. Are there actual places for all these things?
Yes.
And then I think there are at least 2 freezers, right? Do we truly need 2 freezers?
It would be very helpful. Our freezer space is we've got a borrowed freezer in there now, but the freezer space is pretty limited. A lot of our items require freezing.
Like concessions
items, yes.
So to the point where you need 2 more freezers?
Well, the one freezer is borrowed. So we had, the only freezer we had last year was a little popsicle freezer. And so we've got a freezer that, someone was moving and they said, I don't even have a place to store it. So we stuck it there and used it this summer. So the upright freezer would replace that freezer and go into that open space.
That's a 29-inch commercial freezer.
Yes, sir. And then the chest freezer would be a backup freezer and kind of an overflow. For instance, we sold this summer so far about 750 pretzels. And those pretzels take up a lot of room. Okay. But we're making good profits off of those things.
Gotcha.
It would also help staff not have to make so many trips to.
Yeah.
Correct.
The 14-foot ladder, what's that for?
Well, anything that's elevated, that's high, that you need to climb up to. For instance, there's a pulley on the door that opens to the restrooms that's loose, and it would be great to have a ladder just to climb up and get those things, or climb up if there's a ceiling tile, or climb up to
a 14-foot.
It's a platform ladder, so it would be. I mean, there's several steps. I could get up and pull one of these panels off and look. That's about the height of it, and look up in there if I
So
need
does
to.
it fold? Is that what it is?
It does fold.
Yes, sir. You couldn't put a 14-foot ladder in
here. No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be. I think it's the reach it gives you 14 feet of reach.
So if you were using the ladder like an extension ladder, it would be 14 foot. But if you used it as an A-frame ladder, it'd be 7 foot.
I don't believe so.
Just make sure you don't buy a 14-foot ladder, you can't set it up in a room like this.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, you see what I'm saying?
I do.
I can't think, I'm not as intimately aware of that pool, but I can't think of, the reason I'm asking is a 14-foot ladder is an exceptionally long ladder.
Sure.
I'm trying to think of where that actually has purpose, and it has a big price tag to it.
And I was imagining exactly what Natalie said, one of those aluminum ladders that, they break in half, that they fold over half, and then you can extend them and down.
Those
but,
can't.
but is that not what it is?
That is not. This is it's a platform ladder. It's almost like a step ladder, but it's got a platform on it. And if you get on the top rail, there's actually a kind of a thing you can stand on the very top.
So like scaffolding?
No, I don't
Like,
have
like those ladders and Lowe's you push around? Yeah, that sounds beautiful.
No, it's almost like a step ladder would be. It folds in and it
So
folds
you can
out.
stack pretzels really high.
Yes, I will make sure that that is
You
the correct ladder.
do. I'm just telling you, 14-foot step ladder
It's a tall ladder.
or a 14-foot straight ladder. It's not, won't work in that facility.
Sure.
Okay, the deck chairs.
Yes, sir.
Are those the same kind of deck chairs that were there, that were there before?
No, these are,
Can we agree that those deck chairs,
those deck chairs are gone.
and because they didn't hold up, right?
That is correct.
And these
Yes.
will. We're
These
not
are,
gonna make that mistake again.
these are Adams, made in America, 350-pound tests of chairs.
Okay.
I
I saw that designation, but I didn't know if those were the same designation as the ones we got before, which didn't hold.
Mark,
Is
what's
that this very, yeah,
the trash hauler that the
So
shipping
that
is?
works.
The shipping, see, when you do price comparisons, this price is about half of what most of the other prices for the similar items are. And they either get you on the shipping or they get you on the.
What is the item?
It's got 3 wheels on it and it's a large cart that they can take the trash sacks out of the trash dumpsters and put it in this cart. So the juice from the trash bags, I know that's gross, doesn't get all over the deck and create a trail and things like that. They can remove that trash and move it to the trash dumpster without getting that smell. I walked up to the pool the other day and I could smell where the trash had been hauled off, basically, and was leaking out of the bags.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna add COP balance to our future agenda item list, just so we can get a formal approval on what we do with the remainder of those monies. And the next item on the agenda is the new City Hall updates. We received an email, this is Thursday, Tuesday night, is that right? With 3/4 of the pricing on the hub and the various dark fiber loops, but they are still working on about 1/4 of that. They think they will have it to us by the first part of next week is what they're alluding to. So I'm hoping that we can have a sit down, myself and Sam can have a sit down and a learning session with them so that we have a very firm grasp that everything that we are wanting is in their presentation before it comes back to you. So right now, what is holding up a presentation on this is dark fiber information.
And I'm hopeful that on the next agenda for you.
Exactly.
I don't want to bring it back to you completely.
So that's where we are on that. Are there any other questions on it before we move on? Okay. The next item is the city administrator position search. So using information that I took notes on from our work session on this topic, I put together a job posting ad, which is the first page here. And I will apologize that my wonderful proofer did not catch some of my typos, so I apologize. And then I also have a job description. Now this is just the first half of the job description because we agreed that the portions behind, which were education qualifications and reading abilities, math abilities, physical abilities were all appropriate in the original. But these are the areas that I had changed. So I wanted you to have a chance to look at them. And again, there are definitely some typos in it. So I apologize for that. Starting with the job posting, is there anything you'd like to see changed in this? If not, are we okay to run this with the Missouri Municipal League? The cost is $45 for 30 days. Good to go?
Yeah, I'm good.
Right. Karen, in the last paragraph, Marshfield officers should be Marshfield uppers. I think I was working on something for the police department before I did this, and I didn't get it. So, on the job description, and again, there is more that goes in here, but that part was already done, and apparently I just didn't type it. I apologize for that. So, is there anything within here? And Stacy, I'd love to have your red pen marks, but not necessarily in the meeting. That you would like added or changed or clarified in any way? My intention with this is that I will add the rest of the document into the back of it, and this, with the job posting, will be posted on our city's website. So this posting will go on the Missouri Municipal League. They will see that. The last line of it alludes that they can get more information about the job itself on our website. It will take them there, and this will be posted along with the posting that you see in front of it. So that's, other than Stacy, I will definitely take your red pen marks. That's what I'm hoping to do to advertise this. Any comments, questions, disagreements, concerns? All right.
Oh, good.
Let's move on to the 2020 budget amendment. So I want to start off, we held this over because we knew there were some changes that needed to be made. Not all of those are completed in this document. So I'll start off by saying we're not asking for approval tonight. But the main point of doing this particular document, when Monica and I started this, was to make sure that we were properly monitoring the financial effects of COVID. And so that's what this exercise was really more about than amending the budget. Legally, we don't have any pressing reason to amend our budget right now. Our expenditures are still well within line. We're not at risk of violating any compliance issue by not approving this budget. But we want to get it right before we amend it, right? Because we don't want to keep bringing it back. So, Monica, if you don't mind talking about the items you've already changed in the document.
Sure. I highlighted the yellow items that I changed from the previous version that was provided to me. So, the original budget amendment had the sales tax revenues reduced by 3.5%. Where we are right now, we are still tracking to be actually above budget. So we are not seeing a decrease at all. Of course, you know, we have a few months left, so anything can go. So these numbers include a 2% decrease to still be conservative, to still reflect the possibility of some dip in our sales tax revenue.
So a lesser decrease.
Correct. But still a decrease. But we are, I mean, we're not showing a decrease as of August. So, but again, you know, we don't really know what's going to happen in the next 4 months. So that's the general fund. Well, all the sales tax revenues for the general fund, for the restricted parks fund, as well as the our debt service fund as well. And then, no, not debt service, sorry, transportation fund. And then our expenditures for the general and administrative department includes the fire district annexation expenses, which is the title search, the deeds, and the E-code. And then also the transfer to the parks fund for the fire district property transfer. That $15,054 is basically what the amount of money that the parks paid for the 3 acres. So that's to reimburse the parks. And then on the second page, it just shows you the net difference compared to what it was last time. And then on the parks, again, the sales tax, and then transferring in the fire department property reimbursement there. What I didn't capture, well, I captured the COP list on the bottom because we're going to, whatever we purchase on the COP list that Mark has provided, we will be paying out from the city funds. But what I did not capture on this is the actual reimbursement coming back in. But I did show it as an expense on there. So that'll have to be added in as the reimbursement for whatever COP funds are purchased. On the transportation fund, it's the sales tax again. And then the water fund, you're switching over to a meter read software. And in the original budget document, we weren't going to use census or our current read system. We weren't going to be able to use that for the full year, but because the changeover is, we had to use census at the beginning of the year, and now we're going to have to upgrade to this other read. So this is an unbudgeted expense. Originally, it was going to be a wash, but next year it won't be. It'll just replace the expense that we're currently using a different software. If that makes sense.
Pretty well wraps it up. We will also tentatively place a revenue into the next budget for the transportation COP amount that was approved. And if there is anything left over, then we'll play with that number as we go. And then there are some items that are unbudgeted later on in our meeting that we will put back into these documents as well based on what we approved tonight, so that our amended budget covers all of our knowns at this time. So at this time, again, we're just going to let those sit, and we will bring them back in a more complete version at the next meeting. Our next item is the 2020 property tax levies. These have been presented, or the parks and the cemetery have been presented and approved by the respective boards. I think in both instances, they increased 1/100th of a penny. So obviously both took their maximum levy possible, which is always a sound thing to do. We have had a public hearing on these tax rates. Are there any questions? Okay, if we're ready for the bill, I'll go ahead and read with first reading. Bill number 2020-55, an ordinance levying and assessing a property tax for general revenue fund, park fund, cemetery fund, general obligation bond series 2003, and general obligation bond series 2018 on all real estate and personal property, railroad companies, telegraph and telephone companies, and other public utilities within the corporate limits of the city of Marshfield, Missouri, that is not exempt from taxation by state or national law for the year 2020.
Budget approved.
First and second, roll call.
Foster,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Montgomery, yes, Lee,
Yes.
Second reading, bill number 2020-55, an ordinance levying and assessing a property tax for general revenue fund, park fund, cemetery fund, general obligation bond series 2003, and general obligation bond series 2018 on all real estate and personal property, railroad companies, telegraph and telephone companies, and other public utilities within the corporate limits of the city of Marshfield, Missouri, that is not exempt from taxation by state or national law for the year 2020.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
We'll enter new business. Planning and zoning.
So before you have two plats, and so the first one is going to be for the Assemblies of God out on Double O. So basically, you have a they're combining their 2 lots into 1 lot. They're wanting to build an accessory building, which their code will allow them to do on a separate lot. And so for the purpose of being able to extend and build other facilities, they're replatting from 2 larger lots into 1 large lot. Planning and zoning met, and they did approve the past planning and zoning, and so it's before you tonight. Three questions on that one before I move on. Both pretty straightforward. No other questions? If you have some, I'll come back to it. The Schubel subdivision replat. I think everybody's probably familiar with driving by there, but there was actually right there on the southernmost corner there of Elm and DD. There were actually 7 lots along that in that tract of land. And so what they've done is they've broken that out from 7 separate lots into 2 larger tracts, which will allow them to build. Tract 1 is keeping the house and the swimming pool on 1 tract, and then allows them to build another house on tract 2. They have elected for the house to face the east, meaning their driveway is their rear yard will be on the west. That driveway is set by MoDOT, and so that's the MoDOT approved route right there. So it's a state road. And so they control the ingress and egress. And so that they're not looking at adding any additional driveways, it's just going to be that one. And planning and zoning also approved that.
Okay. Any questions or other discussion before we go into reading the bills? All right, we'll start with Assembly of God. Bill number 2020-56, an ordinance approving the final plat of First Assembly of God of Marshfield, a replat of Lot 1 of Marshfield Industrial Park Phase 1, Marshfield, Webster County, Missouri.
Move to approve.
Second. Roll call. Foster.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Montgomery. Yes. Lee.
Yes.
Second reading. Bill number 2020-56, an ordinance approving the final plat of First Assembly of God of Marshfield, a replat of Lot 1 of Marshfield Industrial Park Phase 1, Marshfield, Webster County, Missouri.
Second.
Roll call. Foster.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Montgomery.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Bill number 2020-57, an ordinance approving Schubel subdivision, a replat of lots 1 through 7 of Block 3 of the First Railroad Addition, Marshfield, Webster County, Missouri. Roll call. Foster.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Montgomery.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Bill number 2020-57, an ordinance approving Schubel subdivision, a replat of lots 1 through 7 of Block 3 of the First Railroad Addition, Marshfield, Webster County, Missouri.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call. Foster.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Montgomery.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Okay. First Assembly of God request for permission to build a 3,000 square foot pavilion.
So there's an agenda request form in here. There's not anybody here to speak on this tonight, but there's a request form that was submitted. Basically, the accessory building, the recent code that you guys passed only allows up to the size of the structure or up to 1,200 square feet, unless otherwise approved by the Board of Alderman. They have requested for the church on the lot that you guys just replatted to 1 large lot to build 3,000 square foot.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
No, I would speak to it. I think I think this is a great example of where you have a code that says something. be careful that things don't get out of control. And then when there's a special situation that is fitting, then it can come to the board and get that approval, proving that. And I just think it's no more than to say, this is a situation that's working. It's a part of our code and that works well, and I'm glad we have those stakeholders.
Absolutely.
Move to approve.
Second. First and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Fantastic. Cemetery rules and regulations.
Here in your packet, there's a color-coded section that lays out the rules and regulations for the cemetery. In that, what we've done is I took this back to the cemetery board and laid out some issues that we were having, and so I'll explain those again tonight. So there's some new rules added to it, and there's some minor changes, and there's some other changes that we'll get into. The first one is under number 11. The current code says that that it'll be turned into the funds, the dollars will be turned into the superintendent. We're changing that to the Marshfield Collector's Office. Our superintendent, nor any other employees other than the collector's office, really needs to be handling the dollars. Julie's office needs to be collecting the funds, and so that's what we have. That's what we made that change to. The next change doesn't come until number 22. So I'll give you a little bit of a precursor here before I describe what we've done. So currently, it takes 1 to 2 guys to have an internal service by the time you lay out the plywood, by the time you go through and you dig grade, by the time you have a spotter. And so a lot of times what we have is our employees, when these interment services come about, they fall on an observed holiday, meaning that the holiday may fall on Saturday or Sunday, but the city observes them on a Friday or a Monday. Our guys a lot of times have to miss their holidays with their families and this and that. And so what this is meant for is to allow our employees to observe their holidays with the rest of the employees. So basically it says no funerals can be conducted on any illegal or observed holidays. Holidays that fall on Saturdays will be observed on the Friday before the holiday. Holidays that fall on Sunday will be observed the following Monday. 23, we changed that for no funerals allowed after 4:30 is what the current reading was. And so 4:30, when we look at comp time, I've talked to one of the funeral directors on all these changes, but they didn't have any problems with it. But if they come in at 4:30, our hours of operation are end at 4 or 4:30, depending on what time they start in the morning. And so change that to not starting anything after 3 o'clock. So if you jump down to number 27, this is one of those items that right now there's nothing saying giving our cemetery employee basically the ability not to have to come in over at night or on weekends. I mean, it's a given, and we just haven't really dug our heels in on some things. I mean, it's been really inconvenient, but this lays it out for our cemetery employee. So basically saying that he's not going to come in and sell spaces on the weekends or on holidays. Obviously, with him not being able to accept the money, there's not going to be anyone else here to accept the money. 28 and 29 actually go into a lot of times what will happen is we get very short notice, very, very limited notice. And so if we're not notified of a funeral that is going to take place on that Friday or on that following Monday, if we're not notified in enough time, what happens is our guys kind of wind up coming in on Saturday or Sunday or early Monday morning. If that funeral is not until late in the day, then they accrue more comp time, right? Because they've got to stay until everything's done. And so really what this is geared towards is being towards our employees so that they can better schedule their time. So that, I don't know if there's any questions. I probably didn't do a very good job of explaining that, but.
And those two just require that the funeral homes notify us in a more reasonable time.
Yeah,
to get things scheduled.
Yeah, so basically, just take number 29 for instance. So basically what that's saying is if they don't let us know on the Friday prior, all it's really saying is that we're not gonna, we won't allow them to have a funeral prior to 1 o'clock on Monday. Reason for that is that it takes some time to lay those out and to get them exact and then to dig them. And then, you know, some of them are very tight spaces and sometimes we have to move stones and it's a very, very tedious work that takes some time. And so it's just giving our employees a little bit of time to get it done. Those vault guys show up 4 or 5 hours ahead of time to get all their stuff set up. So we have to be out of the way by then. So if we have a 1 o'clock funeral, a lot of times those guys will be, the vault companies will be there 8 or 9 o'clock. Well, that puts us either coming in over the weekend if we find out about it on Friday, or it puts us being there at 4 o'clock in the morning. So if it's wet, if it happens to be real rocky, I mean, it's not uncommon for us to have to jackhammer some rock out of there. And so it makes things really tight. So.
Any questions from board members on these changes? Okay, since it's part of an ordinance, I'll read the bill. Bill number 2020-58, an ordinance amending chapter 125 Cemetery Board, section 125.060 of the municipal code of the city of Marshfield, Missouri, being a section regarding rules and regulation of the Marshfield City Cemetery.
Move to approve.
Roll call.
Foster.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Lily.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Second reading. Bill number 2020-58, an ordinance amending chapter 125 Cemetery Board, section 125.060 of the municipal code of the city of Marshfield, Missouri, being a section regarding rules and regulations of the Marshfield City Cemetery.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Lily. Yes. Lee.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act policy. So when the board did the emergency declaration in March when COVID started, the board also took action on making sure our employees were taken care of if they contracted COVID. The federal government came out with policy requirements shortly after that was put into place. It came out about April 2nd, I believe. And we didn't get caught up with that to implement the rest of what is required. So everything that's in here is required by this federal law, and it's required to be in place until December 31st, 2020 at this time. So there isn't really anything that's up for suggestion or change. We tried to make it as simple and easy to follow as possible. But we are looking for approval of this policy. All in favor?
Aye.
Fantastic. Next policy. So the judge signed our consent judgment yesterday. And one of the first things that we were required to do in response to that agreement was a traffic enforcement policy. This policy was crafted and reviewed by our attorneys, Doug and myself, and has been agreed to by the Attorney General's office. I formatted it to fit in with the SOGs. As a general rule, this type of policy wouldn't come to a board level. With this particular situation, I thought it warranted our blessing. So I am looking for a vote to approve the traffic enforcement policy for the Marshfield Police Department.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
I
All right.
I guess you guys heard the release that the Secretary of State put out.
I-
It was on KY3.
I saw KY3s. I saw, it took a long time for that to come out, so I had at the point decided that maybe they weren't gonna bother. However, Karen Prego was actually present in the courtroom during the hearing. And so she released an article on Wednesday, I believe Wednesday afternoon, she released an article. There are a few things we'll have to shore up in that, but it's also an interesting read. And I'm sure there will be more to follow. I have not had any press calls at this point. I really think all in all, it's a great win for the city. And I think we'll be fine on the way. We do have a close deadline. One of the requirements is that the 5 of us and Doug receive 90 minutes of training before October 1st. They are still working on approving the training outline. So until that is done, we can't schedule.
So I'll do this, but we don't have it yet.
We're working on that. So let's go on to lift station number 4.
So you guys have a handout in front of you. Mark, I apologize. Let me see if I can share my screen. I'll walk through it. It's pretty cut, base, and dry though. I got these prices. I got everything in literally at 3:30 or 4 o'clock this afternoon. Except for Mark, so you can see it. Okay, Mark, can you see that?
Yes.
All right. So basically, we've got two lift stations with pumps that are out of. Yeah, lift station 4, which is out down here on South White Oak, next to the county shed, right there across from First Baptist Church, and lift station 10, which is out on Tring Road. Lift station 4, back in 2009, there were some improvements done to that lift station. At that time, there was 2 Myers pumps in there. After that, there was some predates my involvement with the treatment plant, but the result was that there was a Myers and a KSB pump in there after that. So it just points that one of the Myers pumps failed, and they replaced it with a KSB pump. And so one of the Myers pump that was in that lift station has failed, and basically it needs to be replaced or repaired. But what I've broken down for you guys is from each vendor, there's some prices and the brand of pumps. Independent Electric, basically they have the rights. They can sell us pumps, but I don't know this for sure, but I'm assuming that they're buying that and just passing that along. So what you see is Independent Electric. The price for a Myers pump is $17,477.14. Fluid equipment. This Homa, we'll get into this in the next in the lift station 10 discussion, but this Homa brand, this is something that we're not overly familiar with. Flight pumps. We have some flight pumps. In fact, we just purchased one earlier this year. We have some flight pumps in the ground. The interesting thing about flight pumps is that the way that they are plumbed and the way that they fit into our lift station is unique, separate from KSB and from Myers pumps. KSB, we'll get into that on the next one, but KSB have the ability to put adapters to basically get us to the flight pump configuration. But anyway, we'll get into that in a minute. But Enviroline has given us price to replace that Myers pump for $11,380. Enviroline has given us price for KSB pumps for $8,170. And then Independent Electric gave us a price to rebuild the Myers pump that was there for $6,476. Out to the side, you'll see the lead time for those. It's starting to be a reoccurring thing. It's an issue to be that far out. Really doesn't play into our recommendation for this. I mean, it does a little bit because it gives us a little more comfort, but in this case, it actually lines up with what staff's recommendation would be. Staff's recommendation for lift station 4 would be to go with the KSB pump, which just happens to be the lowest price. Reason being is we already have one KSB pump in there. This would put us back to a matching set in that lift station. Lift station 10, this is the one out there on Truman Road out behind Walmart. These are the original pumps that were installed back in 2005. This is the lift station. They have 2 flight pumps in them. So this is the one where I'm telling you the configuration is a little bit different, and a Myers pump or a KSB can't just take one out and put the other one in. These pumps sit on rails. The rails don't line up. They don't match up. They slide, so that you don't have to be lowering them down in there and trying to align them. And then they seat on a rubber seat down in there. So Enviroline has given a price for a KSB with the modifications to it for $9,034. That's all the adapters and everything that we need to make it work. We didn't pursue a price on a flight pump for that, just because we got into discussions with them and found out that there was a 21-week lead just to get a flight pump. And so that really wasn't a solution for us for this scenario. So now we get into this Homa brand. Homa is pretty popular on the East Coast from what we understand. And it is like I said, we're unfamiliar with them. We called our engineer, they're unfamiliar with them. However, they made several phone calls today and they were able to reach out to some of their constituents, and everybody that they talked to are very pleased with them. They are, with as you can see, flight is getting harder and harder to get. That was the case on the last one as well. And so what this is they're able to offer this other pump that basically kind of mirrors the setup for flight. And so this Homa pump is $7,426, and it's got a lead time of about 2 weeks. So with all that being said, staff's recommendation would be to purchase a new KSB pump for lift station 4, a new Homa pump for lift station 10, for a total of $15,596. We, you guys will remember, we've established a reserve replacement fund in the wastewater treatment plant. We're not currently funding that. We did fund that through some bond, wouldn't say proceeds, but they were.
These are your interest rebate account from the 1999
right.
bond series.
And so when we refinanced and we paid that bond off, it freed up some dollars that we had invested in that, and so we put that in that replacement fund in order to, well, for this stage right here.
How much was that?
So there's 2 parts. So there was $35,000 coming into this year once everything got finalized, and we refinanced. There was another $40,000, and so currently there is $73,808.24. Yep.
Okay, good.
That's staff's recommendation.
So, a quick question. Do these pumps come with warranties?
They do.
So how does the home? I mean, you've got people to get you some feedback on Homa, but that's one good indicator as well. How do the warranties stack up?
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I will find out on that. I mean, it was literally 5 o'clock before I got all this broken down. So
the only thing I would say is that if KSB, your problem with KSB on this, I guess, is the lead time.
Mm-hmm.
Just won't do.
I don't feel comfortable with it. Not when we can get one within 2 weeks.
So let me just throw this as an extreme.
Yep.
come back from there as an extreme. If Homa doesn't have a warranty and KSB has a 10-year warranty, that's a factor we should consider, right?
Yeah, I think.
Especially without knowledge of our own working knowledge of a Homa.
I told Richard not to get on here tonight. I'd be more than happy to get him on here. He'll probably know. I think what you'll find is that they'll all have basically the same warranty. I can verify that. I can weigh that against that. I mean, if you guys want to approve the higher dollar amount in case the warranty is less, I'm fine with that. And if you want to give me that leniency, it's kind of
I'm fine with that too. You mean between the KSB and the Homa?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's KSB above you've got experience with, right?
Yeah, we have several.
So you have to know how that warranty is.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, I'd be comfortable with that, just in case there's something about that. I suspect you're right. They're going to probably try to be competitive. But in case that's not what.
Understood.
You know what I mean?
Yep, I do. I will say that my original intent was going to be for you guys to ask you all to approve the KSB pump for lift station 4 tonight, to rebuild the Myers pump so we would have a spare on the shelf, and to purchase a new pump for lift station 10. However, after looking into it, there is basically $1,700 difference between rebuilding that Myers pump that has some age on it, wear and tear, and buying a new one. So it's not staff's recommendation that we go ahead and buy one unless the board so chooses to do so. We don't have a spare to go in there, which is the case, and we are working on a list so that you guys can have that, so that we can have that, right, so that we can track that. It's not what we're asking for tonight. If you guys were going to do that, then I would urge you to buy 2 KSB pumps. However, I'm not asking for you to do that at all tonight. So I just wanted you, a lot of times that rebuild will be half the price, which if this was a 25 or 30 horse motor sitting on, 460 volts, we'd probably be looking at $15,000 for that pump. However, it's not the case. Luckily, this pump is $8,000. So staff's recommendation would be to buy the 2 pumps.
So am I hearing that we agree with the KSB on lift station 4, and we want to allow for consideration of the KSB in lift station 10, just in case there is a significant warranty difference between the two?
So yeah, to approve the Homa as requested, but also allow for
Okay.
It seems like there's something.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve up to $17,204 for the purchase of 2 pumps for the state of lift stations.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Fire department property and deeds.
So I was hoping to have before you tonight the actual deeds. They just weren't quite ready for tonight's meeting. So I spoke with Lady Hamilton. The transfer is set to take place on Tuesday, so on the 1st. And so they've assured me that they will be ready by Monday. And so what you have before you on the table on the 11 by 17 sheets are basically the surveys and the drawings for each of the properties. So those conform. Start with the McVeigh Street. They conform to what's in the agreement. The agreement states that that it will include the helipad, and that the deed will reflect, and Natalie and Karen both have to sign the deed, so they will be able to testify that there is a portion of that deed that will need to say that in the case that no longer is a fire station, that it comes back to the city. And so that is, I've already got the legwork done into that, and D. Hamilton assured me that would be in there. In fact, I had a meeting with him in the morning to go over all the details. The other one is basically just what makes sense. the one out on Prairie Lane, you'll see that we carved out a section of the, I guess what you call kind of the northwestern portion, to reserve our lift station back there. Other than that, they're pretty straightforward. The one on Prairie Lane just basically encapsulates that and goes all the way back to the ditch. And this one up here just goes back behind all of that. I did confirm with Michael. It's not that we would be, not that we would necessarily be in breach of contract or anything if this extended past Tuesday. However, their insurance policy takes over on Tuesday, and so there is a need for this to go ahead and move forward for us to transfer these things.
So I am asking for a motion to allow myself to sign these deeds over to the fire district as required by our pre-annexation agreement. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And the second portion of this is the transfer of assets, which is also required by the first.
Yep. And so Michael and I think he's hopped off here now, but if you guys all wanted me to get him back on here, he did text me all ago and said he'd be available. The agreement says that all the assets be transferred. Michael has provided a list. It is quite extensive. It's not part of your packet because it is quite extensive. If any of you want to see it, we can make that available. But Michael and I just felt better and felt more comfortable with an official vote from the board to actually transfer those, just to have on record that we transferred it. So,
and I've seen the very, very extensive list. It was completed for former Mayor Williams. I think when the annexation agreement was being discussed, the only thing I asked was for Monica and Michael to review capital asset purchases. So things that would, I think our value was $1,000. So any item purchased over $1,000 since the time that list was completed. Neither one of them were able to identify any capital asset purchases. So therefore I feel like that list is complete and accurate. And I have asked them to use that to more or less document our transfer of these assets, but we are looking for a vote from you to allow Sam and Michael to complete that transfer of assets.
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Fire department financial closeout. This was completed in our expenditure vote originally. We have, with that vote, transferred all non-employee related line items. We have kept the employee related line items because one, Michael remains our employee until the end of October. Is that correct?
Into November. Yeah.
Into November, okay. And we do still have some accounts payable items that are pending, invoices that just haven't made it in, things like
Verizon.
Exactly. So we're billed after the fact. We will use the leftover amount from those employee lines to take care of both the employee expenses and any leftover accounts payable items. And Michael has been in close conversation with Monica to make sure any other invoices that come in are likely routed through the district and not through the city, now that we have turned over this funds. So we will be coming back to you with yet another financial closeout, and it will be those particular line items that we've kept for these purposes. So there is no vote required on that. Under future agenda items, I have 3 things on my list. The first is we would like to know what happens with the certificate of occupancy when we disconnect water services, specifically looking at that as a health concern. We would like the COP balance and the cash expenses by fund for the pool project so that we can take formal action on using the rest of those funds to reimburse those expenses. and the 2020 budget amendment will come back as well. Other items that will stay on include COVID and the new City Hall project. Are there any other items the board would like to have on our next agenda?
I'd like to circle back to one of our items before we leave this agenda.
Okay.
Just because it's on the heels of, I wasn't sure if there was going to be discussion about it later after we heard from the health department board or not. But would it be okay if we have a little discussion about that? That item, the COVID. So you know, I just want to share my thoughts again on that. You know, it's precisely because there are varying opinions on from like lay people, from the average person on the street about whether it's important to have a mask or not. But on the other hand, we have the highest authorities in the medical field in our land really feel like it is important, and seems to be some evidence that it does help to have masks where they have had mandatory, like for example, New York, which is a huge city, a huge metropolitan city where they enforced or had, enforced is too strong a word because I want to talk about that in a second too, but they had that that mandatory mask order, and they made remarkable strides in the health of their city and made it possible for them to more safely than even we are open their schools. So to me, it's not about somebody's opinion or whether or not they're going to try to opt out or game the system. From our point of view as a board, my opinion, your opinion, and so forth matter, but what we do as a board is also, I think, critical, and it's our job to lead. I wish folks above us were doing that, and they have abdicated, they have forfeited their ability and their place to lead, so it knocks down to us. And for me, I'm in complete support of being leaders, not enforcers, because people will gain it. But that's not, it's not our specific job to be able to be out there and enforce everything. It is our job to lead and set the example so that somebody doesn't have to wonder, should I be wearing a mask or not wear a mask, or be ridiculed if I am, or so forth. They need the ability to have leadership that says, yes, it is okay for you to wear your mask, and others ought to be encouraged to wear their mask. In this case, and within the city, they ought to. So I'm completely in favor of us mandating masks and contributing to trying to make a better situation in this pandemic and be judged, just like Mark said, be judged accordingly in hindsight that we did something to try to lead and make a difference. And then on top of that, knowing that there is a legitimate opt-out for those that legitimately need it, and if people want to lie and game the system, you know, that's separate from our role as leaders. So if I thought there was any support, I would like to take that notion up to expand that into our current guidelines.
Okay, so would you like to see drafts based off of Springfield, or do you have any specific examples to follow?
Well, I mean, okay, what more examples do we want than to say, hey, let's mandate masks? I don't know the mechanics of it that you're talking about, but again, I'm not the professional. I'm listening to professionals, and I'd rather err on the side of caution.
Okay, so we can definitely bring back a draft ordinance at the next meeting and put in with our COVID update. Okay. And based on this input, is it okay if we model this after City of Springfield, since it does have those exclusions already ironed out?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any problem I have with the way they've got it.
Okay.
And perhaps save us from reinventing the wheel. And the expense of doing that.
Okay. With this particular topic, I imagine there would be public opinion. Would we all like to allow a public hearing on this topic, much like many of the other cities have done as they passed this?
Right.
Okay, is there anything else in the process that I might be forgetting?
Yeah, so that's 2 weeks from now, right?
Yeah.
In fact, it'd be the next meeting before
Yeah.
this could come back. So and you know, potentially that's especially because universities and schools are starting, that's potentially 2 weeks too late, but we'll know by then, and it may be particularly important at that point. But it is what it is.
Okay. Any other future agenda items? With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Good, sure.
All in favor?
Aye.